Hello, everybody. We're getting very near the end now. Today starts week 7 of 8. So please try to get me any assignments sooner rather than later now. Next Sunday, which will be March 10th. That's, seems odd that we're already up to March. Not this coming Sunday, but the Sunday after that, March 10th is the final deadline. So everything has to be turned in by 11:59 p.m. that day. I never accept late work, so please, if you have some past due assignments, get those to me. A couple people have received emails on things that were turned in, so please make any instead of a grade. I do that till we run out of time at the end, but we're starting to get near the run out of time at the end point now. So please get everything turned in as soon as you can. Got a few things to go over today. Starting to get into some odds and ends. List I have in my hand for today is a bunch of odds and ends that aren't included in the textbook, but over the years I've found to be very useful or in general good things to know. So lots of little examples, I guess. First one up. This is just, so the first one is just a little, I guess, a technicality. This one isn't so useful. The rest of the stuff today is all things I found to be useful. Any way that we have to feed instructions into a computer, we can give that computer any instruction it can carry out. It's not always feasible though. HTML is a good example of that. It's designed for encoding. That's what we use it for. But we can feed other instructions in as well. Though I've never seen a use for this outside of when we get to odds and ends in this class and just proving that it can be done. It's not feasible to do more complicated things. It's possible, but not feasible. So just a quick example of looking at that to start off with.
I know it's possible for you to, when you go on site, for it to try and download shit. I've had that happen when going on the sites before.
Mm-hmm. There's yeah. Just because something's possible doesn't mean it's feasible. Right? HTML, CSS. Technically, we can feed it. We feed instructions into a machine, but technically we can feed in any instruction that machine can carry out. Just not necessarily feasible. So let's just start some things up here. In delete folder, we'll make a new folder called odds and ends. So just some sort of random stuff. There's going to be a bunch of them disconnected, so I should probably make a table of contents here. So I use the predictive text to set up the whole template and then start an unordered list that will be links for this page. That's just a table of contents because we have a bunch of random scattered things, and I figured it'd probably be a little bit cleaner if we put them in a bunch of different files instead of one giant file. Yeah, I guess I should mention the homework this week is there's a section on e-commerce, which isn't really a word that's used much anymore, but it was when that book was first written, and they haven't renamed the chapter. It probably hasn't been in popular use in 4 or 5 editions of the book, but that's still the name of the chapter. So I'll let her in the room. Yeah, so the name of the chapter is outdated. We haven't said e-commerce in a long time. We just say shopping, and we specify Well, you all know how it goes. Nowadays, the non-computer style of shopping gets the special name. We have to refer to it explicitly. Oh, I'm gonna buy some stuff, but I'm actually gonna go someplace and do it. That's the one with the special name, but the chapter still has the old name. That probably should have been changed 4 or 5 editions of that book ago. I always think. Also, search engine optimization. We should probably look at PayPal buttons. Look at that. That stuff we did last week where we just copied and pasted and they gave us all the code. That's what you have on PayPal and Venmo and just about all of those things. You copy and paste the code in for e-commerce. The book has you do something a little bit different, but it's following along those instructions. But that and search engine optimization is not going to take much time. So we're going to start looking at things that are useful or interesting technicalities. So like I was saying on the first one here, let's set up a HTML page. I'll just use the predictive template. Maybe, I gotta save it first. I'm saying math.html. Enter the doc type. Our HTML tag. I was trying to type it in, but it pulled up the template automatically, so I'm just going to do it this way. So this is not something that would be useful. Everything else on the list is on this list of odds and ends because it's useful. And this is just the thing I said a moment ago. If we have a way to give instructions to a computer, technically we can feed in any instruction that computer can carry out. So HTML, while we usually use it for encoding text format data or data in text format, Unicode, we use it for encoding Unicode data for nicer presentation. But if we have a way to feed instructions into a machine, we can feed in any instruction. So if we wanted it to, say, calculate the Pythagorean theorem, which was cited as common knowledge 1800 years before Pythagoras. Living about the 400s BC, and in the 2200s BC, one of the earliest cuneiform tablets refers to the Pythagorean theorem as we know it, the name we know it by. It refers to that same math equation with the phrase "as everybody knows." So it was common knowledge in like the earliest days of writing.
Yeah, at least to those scholars or whatever.
Well, they were building stuff back then. Some carpenters are always told when things are square. And the actual useful math has been around for a long time. High level math isn't quite so useful. I'm going to put something back in the form element, but let's put a couple inputs in here. I'll just use paragraph tag, but that's really just to get line breaks. So inside some parentheses, I'll say I put input, type of number, as you can probably expect since we're getting ready to do math. We need to give it an ID. So I'm going to call this A, and maybe a step size. Oops. 0.001. I forgot my bookmarks. So it'll take in small numbers. We'll probably just type in an example or so real quick. And then some starting value for it. Start at 0. So I'll have that number. And let me get Zoom thumbnails out of the way on the screen here. I guess the next little thing, here's something that will be useful. Everybody knows the Pythagorean theorem, right? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we need that squared. There is a sup tag for superscript. So obviously we also have a sub tag for subscript. That one's probably the most useful thing from this first example. So A squared. Oops. In that superscript.
You don't have the P closed yet.
It should still go inside of there. My cursor won't go over here to this hooded area. Okay, I don't know what my text editor is doing. Oh, I didn't close the input tag. There we go. Sorry. Close the input tag, then the superscript. So that's going to be like the A squared. I'll split this up a little bit. Try to make it somewhat easier to read. Plus our B value, which is probably easiest just to copy this. And the only thing that's going to be different is that ID. Equals, and then there is a specific tag we need if we're going to try to do math right from the HTML. We do need the output element with, again, this, so the inputs need an ID and the outputs need a name, which is kind of odd. Call that C to fit what it's going with. And then we use the for attribute, which part of the reason I wanted to show this is for some reason the book uses, our textbook uses the for attribute and the label it when it does labels on a form. In chapter 9, the book kept using the for attribute and the labels, and that does absolutely nothing. It has no impact there whatsoever. So I'm not really sure why they used it there. But the for attribute here, we add in the for the IDs that we want to give it. So using those other IDs, this is the output for those inputs. Okay, so then we need to do a superscript with another 2 to make the formula look nice. And then we, oops. Before that superscript, though, probably close that output tag. So input squared plus input squared equals this output box squared. Then we can end the paragraph. Let's take a look at that one. You see, we kind of get some little bit of view on it, and when we plug numbers in, we'd like it to calculate, and we can put that right up there in the form element. Like we saw last week with the JavaScript, every HTML element already has lots and lots of event listeners listed out. One of the events that can happen is an input. It can receive some input. So that's typically the way this is done. Not that this is ever really done outside of an example to prove it's possible. But on input, we can put our equation here. So that C, which remember was our output, we want to change the value of that equal to, there's a built-in math library. So math dot square root. That's a good way. You probably encountered that math library in JavaScript, but it's actually part of your browser. So we can access it from lots and lots of different places. It belongs to the browser, not necessarily the JavaScript. And then we just interrupt with that grand theorem. So like a dot value, like we saw last week, we want the value from that input element, not just the input element itself. And then to square it, we can add both of them together. Plus same thing from b dot value plus b dot value times b dot value. So there's just two of them, it's probably easiest just to type it in. And then when we enter some numbers, like a 3 and a 4, it automatically gives us the other value. And notice when the on input happens. So the cursor's there. And as soon as I type 8, we got something else. Type of 3. So every time there's a number pressed, that counts as an input event. So to keep doing it, that's probably a useful one. As well as the superscripts, and obviously we also have a subscript. I'll put that on here somewhere. T sub 0 is typically pronounced in the British way. T not. Just some common symbol on there for subscripts. So superscripts and subscripts you're a lot more likely to use than anything else from that example. But including it so that this is ready to go when we get to the end of the day today, I'll add that on the page. So nothing too fancy there. Probably not gonna dig very deeply into that one because it's just to show that technicality. Anytime we have a way to feed instructions into a computer, technically we can feed in any instruction that machine can carry out. It's just not very feasible to do so. Because this same thing would, in any scripting language, would take basically 3 lines of code at most. It'd be way, way shorter. And more organized. But just showing that it's something we technically can do. For like 5 and 13. For 12, 5 and 12. Yeah, there's another one of the nice even number ones. What's something else that'll be useful? Next one I could read off the list of what I have, examples I have here. So abbreviations, that's really useful. And then domains are really, really useful because usually when we put a bunch of links on a page, we're not going to a different domain, right? So why do we have to keep typing that on every single link? If all the links go to the same domain, there's some shortcuts. Reversing our text, SVG graphics, meter, which our textbook mentions, we can't do anything. I guess we could do a meter here.
You might reverse text.
Yeah, reverse text or images, whatever.
Like flip them or?
Yeah. So instead of left to right, go right to left for the language. So if you're in English, you can flip it and read it back, put it backwards. If you were writing in Arabic or one of the languages that goes right to left instead, you flip it to go left to right. But we can control that. I've never found a need for that, but it has been there since the very beginning of HTML. So I guess it's kind of like the mat, other than that, I've never really seen anything, any useful purpose for it. I didn't get through the list. Meters, one that your textbook mentions, meters and progress bars. But they mention in kind of an odd way. Because with what the book shows, you can't do anything with them. So I'd like to be able to actually do something with it. So let's do one that meter. Whoops, that's not what I meant to save that as. We'll try that again. Save as meter.html. There we go. Then we can pull up from that template. The text editor knows, or copy and paste from somewhere, or just type in a couple of tags we need. Because most of these we don't need. We'll talk about the meta tags in a couple days. And really, we can get by without a title tag. We shouldn't, but we can. Maybe edit the template a little. And you should have control over that as well. No matter what text editor you're using, you should have control over the templates. So you can choose how they start with. So our book shows 2 of them. So like, what is just called a meter element. ID equals meter. Minimum of say 5 to a maximum of 50. Some starting value by default, so 23 maybe. And in that. This is all the book shows of that. It shows that they exist. Push over that page. So it's just kind of a meter that fills up. We also have progress, which goes from 0 to 100. Meters can measure arbitrary amounts, and a progress bar always goes from 0 to 100. Otherwise, they're identical. By default, the progress bar shows in blue, and a meter shows in green. Typically you would do something with a script on those. I'll put a little script in here.
I think I've seen meters be used in a variety of ways on that site.
But when we put it in the HTML like this, there's no way to change it. So normally the meters would change though.
Yeah.
So we need some sort of script to keep track of the change or the progress. A way to visualize our numbers so that are changing, because if we have a static number that never changes, we might as well just write that number there. Just like we saw before, we need a reference to it, what we saw last week. So I'll just call it meter. Sounds like a good name for it. Same ID, gave it up there. And we can look at the document we're working with and get element by ID. So nothing new in this case. Meter. And here we do want access to that whole element because we're going to change the value that's in there. Probably put a spot to put this. So I'm going to add a line break and then a little span of text with the ID equal output. And number equal. So accessing that same math library again, I wanted to show it from the HTML first before we looked at it in JavaScript. Obviously we're going to use the math library in JavaScript a lot more often than we would use it in the HTML. but that math library does actually belong to your browser. There are better JavaScript libraries built specifically for JavaScript that you can import and use, but we know the math is going to have that. Has everybody seen random numbers? Anybody seen random numbers before? Sure, right up. Do a quick note on the board then. I don't see a whole lot of responses. So a random number, our basic ones are almost like a probability. It's a number somewhere between, somewhere between 0 and 1. And it includes 0, but does not include 1. So does not include the definite, like probability, only we do not include the definite case of 100%. So some floating point value in that range is what we get with our just basic random number. So if we wanted an integer, they're built into most libraries, so there's shortcuts already built in because they're really, really easy. If we took that and say multiplied by 52, deck of cards is a good example. We need 52 random numbers to represent our deck of cards. That would give us some number that includes 0, because 0 times 52 is still 0. And then up to 52, but not including it. So 51.9999. However many nines we have enough bits for. Which also would be a decimal value, which does not work out perfectly in binary. So floating point numbers get a little bit funny whenever we have whenever we're going to use all those digits at times. So then if we floor that, there's almost always a floor function, which just cuts off the decimal portion. If we do that, then we have a number. It's not going to drop any further than 0. But that 51.9999, or really close to 52, but not including it, it's going to drop back to the integer portion. So get 51. And then if we wanted to, we could add 1. It's probably a common step. And then we have some number between 1 and 52 for like a deck of card examples. That's what we always have. It's really, really easy to do. It's one line of code, basically. I wrote it out over several things. So it's built into most of our programming languages. Somebody has taken a couple moments to go ahead and type that one line of code and save us some trouble. The downside is of that is you have to remember what somebody else called it. And over the years, I found it can be a lot easier just to always go back to that most basic random one and do these 2 or 3 steps instead of trying to. I find that easier than trying to remember what somebody else named the function in all our different languages. So math.random gets us a random number between 0 and 1. So if we multiply by 100, and then we come back out front and do math.floor to get rid of all of that, then we have a random number somewhere between 0 and 100, 0 and 99. It's an integer at this point. That'll probably work for us. So some random number between 0 and 99. Actually, we don't need that many, do we? We need to go 5 to 50. So we have 45 possible values. So now we have some number between 0 and 45. So if we add 5, now it's between 5 and 50. So you can see it's really easy to do, but remembering what somebody else named their function can be a little bit trickier at times. Over the years, I found it's easier just to go ahead and type that. Then we can just set that. So like meter.value, the value of that meter, we can set to the number. I forgot to say my column up here. end of instruction. And then on that output, we can do the same thing. Document.get element by ID. Our output, the inner HTML for it is going to be that number. So that last line I did a little bit different because we were always setting up variables to have a nice short word to refer to it, but we could do this every time. Probably not a good idea to do that, but we can. The variable just gives us an easier way to refer to this. So now we get a random number and we just need to decide when to do it. We saw buttons the other day. On click is easy. We just saw on input. So anytime we make an input change, every time we hit a button on the keyboard or click the mouse, that's another input event. On load is a very common one. When the page first loads, let's choose a random number. When the page first loads, let's call that randomized function. And if you have multiple functions you want to call, you can just put a semicolon separated list. We don't have multiple functions in this case, but if you had more functions you wanted to call, you can just put them in this way. Usually it's better to call the multiple functions from inside another function so that you're only calling one, but we do have that capability. Now if I reload that, so see 34, and every time we hit reload, we're getting a different value. Probably absolutely nothing surprising there. I just wanted to cover it because I really, really dislike how our textbook introduces meters. Because it's kind of an unnecessary thing if the number's not changing. Let's see. Writing words backwards. Creations, domains, animation. Oh yeah. CSS animations we're going to look at today too. That one's probably going to come after a break because it might take a little bit longer and we might start playing around with things. SVGs, we'll look at those. I can overflow blocks and restrict things. Add a couple paragraphs on here, so maybe a couple break lines. I'll just do this one here. Then I'll add a paragraph element. Actually, I'm going to make this a section. Section element, and I'll give it an ID, and we'll call it no click. We'll see why I went with that name in a moment. Then we just need some words here. Paragraph. This can't be clicked on. I guess I could put the style sheet here. Doing embedded. So from the ID and the words in that sentence, you can probably already see where this is going, right? Right now, we can click and highlight the words on that paragraph. Absolutely nothing special about it. Let's duplicate that line. So I'm just going to copy and paste that a bunch of times. You'll see why I did that too. but we have no trouble. It's clickable. We can tell because of the ability to highlight words. If we come up to the CSS, put it on this same page, that'll make it easier for using this for reference later. Oops, not script. I don't know why I just typed that. Style in the style sheet, and then somewhere in here we can say for that no click ID element. First off, I want to do this. We haven't seen this. Background color, linear gradient. We haven't really looked at linear gradients, have we? We need a couple of things, some sort of angle. So maybe 13 degrees. And then we need our starting color and stopping colors. So I'll just do a random hex color for a 88 B2. So we'll start there. And then we'll go to 77 A3 B4. So just a couple of colors. Give it some background color. Or not. What did I skip there? Linear gradient. Should not have my commas. Okay, I'm gonna skip that for now because I'm forgetting something. We'll look at a linear gradient after a break. I'll look it back up. Wasn't what I was gonna do on this one anyway. So we have this property pointer events. Set that to none. I'm still clicking. Thought I did.
Maybe you need to hard reload it.
Possibly. I'm gonna put this in an external style sheet. Because none of the link relevance equals style sheet. href equals meter.css. I'll make a new one that is meter.css. Did I get the right name on that? It is no click. That looks right. Save that. Save that. Reload. I guess we still have highlighting. I'm gonna put a little script that'll do something. Another function.
You just put like a hyperlink on one and just see if you can, because that prevents you from interacting with the hyperlink.
That'll work. Already halfway here. By E, that output. Enter HTMLs, whatever it was, and add, just click the thing. see if this shows up. And then whenever we have this section, we can put an on-click event. We have all of our listeners in every HTML element. Yeah, doing it this way also gives us another thing. We can see nothing's happening. I guess it still highlights the words. Firefox used to not do that. I never checked if Google Chrome did that or not.
I know there is some way you can prevent somebody from being able to highlight and like copy and paste, because I've had that, like when I try to do that to copy and paste something from some document, I've had it where it just won't let me do anything.
Yeah. So we can see here, if I take that line out, it does detect the click. I believe it would do that. Let's see. Copy. Paste, so does that fine. Now, as I click on it, those extra words aren't showing up. Copy. Oh, it doesn't.
There's some way to do it because I've encountered it, but I don't know what.
Yeah, there's some weird bugs with browsers and the copy and paste shortcuts. Sometimes y'all probably encountered it before between shared documents, or anytime you're doing something on a browser. Sometimes your copy and paste won't work, and then it'll start working again. And the browser just doesn't pass the events through like it's supposed to.
Honestly, I've not, except for those ones where it's like they've somehow coded it so that it prevents you from even highlighting. I have not really seen that, honestly.
Let's do a little bit more on this.
I have
The reason I put all those other things in there, so like, actually I want a background color because that's bothering me now. I use linear gradients all the time. That is something I do very commonly. Let's look it up. Because, well, right now it's all white, but we can see it's just pure white. If we give it a color, like instead of a linear gradient, if I just put green in there, put some nice color in there, it fills it in, but it fills it in perfectly, right? Colors don't actually work that way. Where's my stop screen? If I take the camera in here, and the room here, and pan it over on the green wall, that's all just one color of green paint, right? But you can see, as if you hadn't seen the wall before, there's a lot of variety in that one color of green. Right? We have the way the light's reflecting on it, the dense. It's not even really an even distribution. I think this one was done by professional painters, so it's a lot closer than the average person using cheap paint at cheaping out at Home Depot. Right? But
it also depends on lighting.
Yeah, there's not perfect distribution. There's lighting. There's uneven surfaces. So those perfect colors are not.
I was looking up at the camera. The green one really come through too well, but you can tell it's different colors.
Yeah. I say green. Green is a cat. Green's not a color. That's another problem with those name colors. Green is one of them, but green. If you went in Home Depot and asked for green, they'd look at you like you were crazy and point you towards the 10,000 to choose from.
50 billion different greens. It's like, I just want green.
Yes, but this is just perfectly distributed. Every
Which of these
pixel has the green one.
Which of these 10 shades look exactly alike do you want?
Yes, so I pretty much never do that. I'll do a linear gradient and I'll do a couple of greens. What did I forget when I typed this in? Linear gradient. Angle, color.
Percent.
We'll get to the percents in a second. That is exactly what I did. Angle, color. Angle, color. I thought that's what I did. Maybe that's not what I did.
You did it in hex, maybe it didn't like hex.
It should work with any of our colors. Don't forget a space. 23 degrees. That just shows some random angle. Then one of our colors, something green, so A2 91. And another color. Maybe this one has a lot of red, 91 A2 34. So just switching the numbers. What did I do wrong there? Do I have to do the other one? I've used hex colors in those many, many times. So that's bothering me. I do this like regularly. Or is that just looking? So, don't know the process. Look this up. Angle, color, color. There's some size, a lot of other different views. We can start using keywords when we have those functions.
I basically did the linear gradient there, just typing in red and green, just did a little bit.
I'll just do that. So look at it up here now. So I'm gonna try this. It recognizes all of it. We definitely have something there.
I did wrong over there, didn't maybe change or something.
Okay, I don't know why my linear gradient's not working. I'll come back to that. I just assumed it would work. Okay, but I usually use that for subtle things. Let me try a paragraph. Oh, I know what it is. The gradient is not a color. The gradient is several colors, right? So we need it to be a background image. We go back to those colors I added a second ago.
Yeah, it shows back, or just background, dash anything.
Well, it's multiple colors, so we need it to be an image, not a thing. So usually things that are closer together than this, I'll just give it a very subtle effect, like what a natural color would be. And we can do them repeatedly. We can keep adding to the list. So if I take this first one, paste that in. Just split it up more, and then we just have like sort of a light spot. Yeah, I guess that would almost look like the paint is faded. The sun constantly hit it the same spot over and over again, or almost like a glare in the color in that case. Probably wouldn't do it to that extreme of a level, but we can, it makes a more natural effect. And then the percent, so right now it tries to spread about evenly. If we add a percentage in there, 30%, and I'll add one on the last 80%. needs to be fully into this color by that point. So see how it, instead of stretching it evenly, that kind of narrowed down the gap, or let's try some more extreme examples. So like 40 to 60. See how we get that very, very small gap. So by that percentage of the way that it's going, it'll need to be, it wants to be faded completely in by that point. So maybe 15% to 95%. So most of it will be that little glare in this case, and then we have some shadows at the edge. And usually not so extreme difference of colors, but if it's very, very subtle, it'll make a big impact on how users view your site. Now that we can see that, we can see every place we can click on it. Kind of big though. Let's make that smaller. So like width of 14 characters and a height of 14 characters. I'll do word wrap in a second. That's small, almost too small for our words. And notice what happened. The word just kept going, but we can see where our element ends. That's too much of the width, so let me back that off to like say 7. There we go. Y'all have seen automatic word wrap before when things get small. It's going to try to make them fit, but we can turn that off. Word wrap. Yeah, basically the option we put in there is none if we want to turn it off. Did I not save it? It should be normal and none. So normal gives us a word wrap, and none should turn it off, but it's not turning it off. So before we turn it off, and comment that line off, we need to work with the overflow. Obviously, we say no overflow. Yeah, usually that's the default. None is we're not doing anything. The one we probably want to scroll. Here's our scroll bar, which can be a little bit odd because now we can definitely see that it's not clickable.
Yeah.
Yeah, word wrap's not turned off. I don't know why the word wrap's not turned off. Usually none will stop that. I think it's because it's too small. It's just being difficult. But adding the scroll bar in there is something you probably want at some point, just from the overflow property. See how we have a bunch of just random stuff today? That's pretty much what is on tap for today. Yeah, all these other things are really small. Writing letters backwards. Well, CSS animations and CSS variables are kind of a big one. Abbreviations, domain stuff, counters. Quite a few things to go over. We could, I guess we could add a counter onto this page here. HTML. And since we have lots of space after that, I'll choose some other div. I'll just do an article this time. Add a paragraph. There's a paragraph. And then I'll copy that a bunch of times, or duplicate it a bunch of times. I want to know how many times would that happens though, right? Especially if the page is going to be generated dynamically. We have a list or something. Yeah, I'll do it this way. So I'm going to add something to the body tag, so it applies to everything in the body. And I want to do counter reset. And then just make up a name. Paragraph counter. Oops. Then I'll add a comment here. I just made up the name. So counter reset is a property. We can't just go making up properties. But this paragraph counter name, I just made that up. And then later we could say in the body tag, there's an article tag, and then that is paragraphs. And let's type some stuff before the paragraphs. And you see the counter stuff now. Counter reset, increment, or set, so we can just change whatever value it is, or just increment every time we have a paragraph. And then, whoops. Then throw in the name of that counter we made up. And then we need to put it somewhere. I remember seeing content. We saw it when we looked at printing. We can use CSS to add words to a page. So really, we don't even need the HTML part. We can do it all with CSS, but it's back to that technicality. I'm gonna write copy number, then a space, and then ask for a counter, and then here I'll put in one paragraph, or what counter we want, which is the paragraph counter in this case. Maybe a colon and a space, and then we'll type the actual paragraph that is in the HTML. Does that line make sense to everybody? So, yeah, today's just all about useful things that can be useful that the book doesn't mention. With static pages, we know how many there are. We can just type a number, but most of our web pages are a bit more dynamic. Right? Somebody has to log into our site, and then what they see is based off the access they have. Every user that logs in sees something slightly different about our site. That's much more common in our modern world. I think you all are well aware of that. And in that case, we wouldn't know how many paragraphs are going to show up on that page. So might want a counter of some sorts. Might want to block some people from being able to click on things and allow others to click on things. Pages are usually a lot more dynamic than we have here. Oh yeah, and then the meter thing. Our textbook shows meters. They just have you type a number in and it never changes, which isn't really what a meter's for. There's a similar one called progress, which progress goes from 0 to 100 every time.
That's just probably just 0 to 100 meters, whatever value.
So you can also do a meter from 0 to 100 if you wanted to, but then you have a progress bar and you added in extra steps to get a progress bar. Okay, that's 2 o'clock. So this is pretty much what's on tap today. A whole bunch of odds and ends that will be useful for you. The next one, well, next up we're gonna take a break. Actually, can I have one more in here? And then we'll take a break, and then we'll look at some colorful things. You might not see the text turning around. Something about abbreviations. Let's look at this real quick, and then we'll take a break. This is a really easy thing. Oh, wait, actually, I do want to look at this after the break. I just remembered a question that showed up a couple years ago that stretches this out, and is another useful place for it. So, well, we can take a break, and then we'll look at abbreviations real quick, and then CSS animations, and that'll probably fill out the time for today. That way we still have plenty of time to work on stuff, because you all have a final project coming up. Some people might have past due homework that needs to be turned in sooner rather than later now. I'm pretty laid back, so there's no say a whole lot, and except most work late. But we're getting really near the end, and there's a final cutoff of March 10th, after which no work can be submitted. But for now, it's 10 minutes, sound good? Quick break. So my laptop says 2:04, we'll get back to it at 2:14.
I don't know what I did wrong. Heater doesn't work.